Is your security strategy ready for today's evolving threat landscape? And let's get to know our expert for today. He's the security practice leader at LRS. Let's welcome and let's get to know Chris Hill.
Hey, good afternoon, good morning, depending on, I guess, where you guys are at in the world. My name is Chris Hill. I'm the security practice leader here at LRS, better known as Levi Rand Schaub. I know some people says that kind of sounds like a law firm, but we're most certainly a technology firm. We have seven different business units. The unit I work in is a typical type VAR scenario where we do strategic consultation and things along those lines. I come from a background of state government, spent 24 years basically in the state government, state and local space. My first set of adventures in that world was as a consultant, and then formally became a full-time employee here at the state of Illinois. I was the former CISO. Spent a lot of time as either in the CIO role at the agency level or as in the cybersecurity space. And like I said, I was the former CISO for the state of Illinois.
Diving into our first data set, our team engaged with 165 business technology decision makers, to learn about their experiences and concerns regarding cybersecurity threats. Here's what the data reveals. So, as you can see, 51% of them stated it's phishing attacks, followed by 43% who stated malware and ransomware. 23% of them stated social engineering, e.g., impersonation, pretexting. Another 21% stated denial of services and distributed denial of services attacks. So, as you can see, the others are on the screen. Chris, does this align with what you're seeing out there? And could you tell us which new cyber threats needs to be top priority in 2025?
Well, yeah, definitely, most certainly, this is exactly where we would expect probably these numbers to land. What's interesting, I think that, the question was posed, what's new? Nothing's new, right? At the end of the day, how these attacks are being performed, the sophistication that's going into these attacks most certainly has changed and will probably continue to evolve. But without a doubt, I mean, phishing still a number one concern, right? With
Mhm.
AI, the things that can be done with deep fakes and voice recognition, voice coverings, those things that really can simulate somebody that you trust that you instill in, be it your boss, be it your own family member. This is the things that can happen with that voice side and video side of phishing can really make some dynamic impacts on what you're experiencing inside an organization and also in your own personal life. I think the other probably more scary aspect of phishing these days involves just phishing as a service. We're not talking about individuals anymore that are trying to proliferate and do things via phishing, but the services that are out there, and these services are very well prepared, very well geared. They're highly sophisticated, to perform these attacks using phishing services, and it's just scary that you can go, subscribe to a service that will start a phishing campaign for you. So, as I mentioned, they're very sophisticated. The way that they operate is just like any other business, right? And it's big business, and it's really becoming a problem. I think
Wow.
the oh no, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, no, no.
Yeah, I think the kind of the other things that's stated out in this graphic and some of the things that aren't stated in the graphic, obviously ransomware continues to be, a huge problem with the double extortion type of events that are happening in the ransomware space. No longer is your data just getting ransom and encrypted and looking for ransom. They're also now, looking at, publishing that data as a double form of extortion, and that's making organizations that do have ransomware events just more vulnerable. So, as I mentioned earlier, these attackers are going to continue to shift the way that they do business, but it is a very sophisticated business. One thing I was kind of I thought was interesting, the IoT devices was way down on the list.
Mm-hmm.
With IoT being as vulnerable as those devices are, and as many of those devices that organizations and individuals have on their own networks, to me, that's still a pretty big a pretty big concern in our eyes. And then I think with the way that the nation state is and cyber warfare and along those things, that's continued to going to be a problem in the political landscape that we live in today. So.
Thank you, Chris. You might have already answered this. So, based on your experience, you know, which new cyber threat, needs to be top priority in 2025 based on your experience?
Well, I most certainly think that from a threat perspective, it's still in that, organizations they have to be well prepared for a
Mm,
ransomware attack. How that typically spins up is inevitably they start
mm,
with some sort of phishing attack or vulnerability that they found within the environment. But to me, those two are still are going to remain probably top at the list. I mean, you guys pointed it out in the poll that those were your top two concerns, and rightly so, because those are the areas that most certainly are going to remain problematic. And I think with phishing being as simple as user education, it's not that simple, at the end of the day. And AI is making that more problematic. And then the advances that are happening with ransomware and the way that ransomware organizations are able to hide their movements within your environment and the time and the due diligence that they're taking to evade tooling that's out there is only going
mhm.
to get worse. So.
Wow, thank you. Let me go ahead and move on to the next slide here. So we reached out to the same group of business technology decision makers, to understand the top areas where they want to strengthen their cybersecurity posture. 42% of them stated it's cybersecurity awareness and employee training, followed by 37% who stated risk management and threat mitigation. Another 31% is stated it's incident response and crisis management. So, Chris, what can you say about these data? Also, which unknown weak points are most common today?
I mean, we hit on it quite a bit there during the last conversation, but employee awareness, cybersecurity awareness, the training, that really is the front line for many organizations to combat these threats and areas that you can strengthen your organization is really most certainly in, awareness training, employee training. There's really good solutions out there that'll help you build a robust training and education solution for your organization. The solutions can now, mimic these types of attacks within your environment that if an employee would happen to click on a link, it can put them into training scenarios or alert them of what they did was not right. And
Mm,
those are always good things because I think at the end of the day, it gets the user to really think. They don't want their coworkers to, frown upon their activity that they clicked on a malicious link, even though it may have been just part of your training and education purposes. They don't want the IT department or their boss to also be, alerted of those things. So I most certainly think that the users are always going to be problematic and be a weaker point for any environment, but the more that we can do around educating them of things that can happen and the emphasis on education, be it, gamification or positive impacts that you can have towards your users when things do go awry for them. Encourage them to still report and to continue to report. And I think that all goes back to training them to be vigilant when they're online. So not only at home but in the office. So.
That's interesting. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris, for sharing that. Now let's move on to our last data sets here. We ask 185 business technology decision makers, to share their cybersecurity challenges that are impacting their organization. 32% of them shared that it's high cost for maintaining and managing security. 30% of them stated lack of resources and proper skills. 19% stated it's struggling with multiple security products from multiple vendors and no centralization of security. I'm going to pass this over to you, Chris. Does this fit your findings? And how do external security experts help address InfoSec challenges?
Well, I'll be the first to admit, as I mentioned earlier, I've been um, in the value-added consultative resource for about 6 years here at LRS. But prior to that, as I mentioned, I spent most of my career as a client, as one of you individuals that are sitting out there listening in on this session. My fear was handing the keys of the kingdom around
Mhm.
around our security over to some organization that per se that won because they were a low bidder, or they wooed somebody within the organization to think of buying their services and allowing them to run, our operations. At the end of the day, that's always going to be a challenge for an organization to assume that they're just handing, security and everything that they believe about their organization over to a third party. The positive aspects of doing that comes into, I think, the second bullet point that you guys talked about there, the lack of resources and proper skills. Organizations that are in, the infosec space of security or professional services, managed services, response services, in any of those organizations that you work with, their job and their due diligence is to bring you the right resources with the proper skills to address those shortcomings that happens within your current staffing. Could it be the fact that you can't keep security engineers or security individuals on staff just because it is a money flow issue within your organization, or are they just getting stolen to go to work for other organizations that are paying them more, and all that knowledge just walks out your door? So the way I see it as in today's space, I most certainly think that professional services organizations are going to continue to grow and be a very monumental piece of your cyber. And as far as that goes, be it your data and AI or anything in that's professional services, the fact that organizations such as ourselves can bring skilled resources to the table that can handle and talk about things that we've experienced in other environments, I think is going to continue to, make those resources be highly valuable to organizations out there. We get into advanced threat detection and response, and we see incident recovery aspects. We get involved with a lot of compliance and regulatory things. So the things that we see, we can bring that knowledge and that wealth of knowledge to you to the
Mhm.
table to really to talk about. I think the other thing that in that, by leveraging those external security professionals, you can enhance your capabilities without a doubt, but also um, using companies like Proofpoint or SentinelOne or Palo Alto, organizations like that, they see hundreds of millions of events each month. And for them having that exposure, they can build tooling and enhance their tooling to better minimize the chances of your overall event happening within your environment.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. Our conversation has been very informative, about cybersecurity. a cybersecurity threat. Let me just ask you something. This is just me being curious, you know. What innovative approaches have you seen recently that effectively address today's cybersecurity challenges?
I think what I was where I left it is that most certainly I think the tooling of some of these larger organizations that are really making an impact within the cybersecurity space, the fact that they're continuing to use data-driven decisions and AI in order to better their tooling. To me, I think that's going to be the one leverage that companies are going to have in order to continue to increase their posture over, just typical EDR solutions or SIM solutions, but looking at, advanced AI driven EDR tooling and advanced next gen AI SIM solutions that can really, bring real time intelligence to your team or to the service organization that is providing those tools for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. So let's give them a few more extra minutes to complete the poll. I see here that we have some questions on the board, so let's wait for that to be on that part. Okay, 1 second here. This is actually, Chris, a very insightful discussion, you know, cybersecurity threats and all that kind of thing. I really wanted to thank you for joining us today. So, do you have any experiences, Chris, that you are seeing based on your role, your experience that's actually really affecting your client? Like, what's the most popular cybersecurity threat that you've been hearing nowadays?
Many of you may find this interesting, I guess, and I do. I still do today. But for us, I mean, I think we typically like to engage in with our clients as really having an understanding of their overall security posture, and we do
Hmm.
that through a series of methodologies that we have developed. But really, when it comes down to it, we often find typical misconfigurations, known vulnerabilities, identity and access management controls that are lacking, that are leaving organizations highly exposed. And at the end of the day, when you look at these things across the board, it doesn't take a whole lot of fancy tools in order to correct these issues. But if an attacker can come into your organization through a known vulnerability that hasn't been patched,
Hmm.
that's an easy in for them. Or if they can phish one of your employees that
Hmm.
shouldn't have administrative credentials that does, then that again this again gives them just a foothold that you do not want to deal with. So
Hmm.
misconfigurations is probably what we see to be the biggest problem still in most of our clients.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. That's really interesting. Let's look at the first question. How can an organization protect its data from a cyber attack?
Oh, great question. Without a doubt, this is near and dear to my heart, to our organization's heart, without a doubt. We talked a little bit about it earlier, but that employee education and training most certainly is a key element. Regular security audits, performing those security audits, things that you can do within yourself, mapping yourself against the framework to ensure that the tools that you're buying or the processes that you're implementing within your organization is aligning to a framework that is known to be a good set of standards for you to go forward, be it NIST or CIS or any of those things, CMMC if you're in the manufacturing world. Um, the other things that I think that we try to talk to our clients a lot about, is understanding your data movements, data classification, discovery of those data sets, and understanding the importance of those data sets, and be it that putting extra controls around the most valuable sets of data within your organization, and having a strong cyber resiliency, cyber recovery program in your organization. It's
Mhm.
sad that we have to say to most of our clients, it's not if you're going to get attacked, it's when you're going to get attacked, and are we able to recover from that attack? So most certainly, I think that cyber resiliency is a huge piece of the puzzle that a lot of organizations fail to pay attention to.
Thank you, Chris. Another question from the audience. What are the plans to combat AI agent attacks?
I mean, I know I mentioned a little bit earlier talking about, all these organizations such as the CrowdStrikes of the world, the Sentinel Ones and Palo Altos that are using AI in their training tools. And you're exactly correct. The the attackers are using those same set of tools to empower themselves to be, more prolific, more and cause more damage within the client's environment. At the end of the day, is a computer against a computer. I was in a session in Dallas, Texas, probably a couple months ago, and I was leading the panel of AI experts. And
Mhm.
at the end of the day, funny or not funny, but the last question I asked was, will computers save the world or will humans save the world? Obviously, I hope that humans save the world at the end of the day, but it's very, very, it's a very, very interesting time with AI and the power of AI and the things that we don't know, that can happen within the empowerment of AI tooling within a hacker's organization. But again, I do hope that we as humans, at the end of the day, save our planet. So,
Thank you, Chris. Another question from the audience. What impact does advancement in AI play in increased security threats?
again, I think it's the fact that what we don't know about AI or about what the attackers are going to eventually leverage in AI. To me, that's the most, I guess, the scariest piece
Hmm.
of everything in the AI security attackers world. On the flip side of that, having the those organizations, like I said, those big players in the world, the proof points, and those guys that are using AI also to help detect these anomalies and these changes. That's going to be invaluable to us at some point when it's all said and done. So.
Thank you. Let me see here. This is a really interesting question. What makes cloud attacks unique?
What makes them unique? Was that the question?
Yes, what makes cloud attacks unique? And just quote unquote, um, one of the audience stated recently experienced this issue. So it's like past tense.
So I definitely think that the cloud brings a unique set of challenges to to your cybersecurity organization. It also brings a unique set of opportunities to your organization. The challenges, first and foremost, I kind of hit on earlier, but typically what we see in cloud attacks is that flat out it's been misconfigured. The proper controls were not in place, and at some point in setting up these cloud environments, and when I mean setting them up, you got to think of it as there's multi-party involved here. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is that we have SaaS solutions that are out there that we're putting our data in, and we assume at that level as a SaaS offering that the cloud portion of that is highly secure. And that's not always the case. We hope it is, and we hope that SaaS providers continue to be more diligent in that space. But that's not always the case. So it is the fact that those security controls were not implemented correctly. Were they not there? Was it my responsibility or the SaaS provider's responsibility? Those really, I think, are a big problem in the SaaS world. Who really owns the security controls around that SaaS product, that SaaS solution? And then if it's our own cloud, so I spun up some Azure instances out there, and do I have the ability and the knowledge in order to put the proper security controls around them? Because it's real simple to spin up an Azure server and put a SQL database out there and have a web front end on it that's easily accessible to everybody who I'm working with. But in the fact of that being simple, did I actually put security controls in place to protect the data that's being collected and with that web form? So
Mhm.
it really does. Again, the cloud is going to continue to bring unique challenges and unique opportunities at both levels. But I just think you got to be due diligent and understanding what you're dealing with and when you're dealing with it, be it SaaS or be it the fact that it's your own hybrid cloud. So.
Thank you, Chris. Um, a question from the audience. Are there any specific new threats being monitored in the cybersecurity realm?
New threats always, I think it's new threat actors, and the fact that they're continuing to use, ransomware tooling and things along those lines. But some of these new threat actors that we're seeing pop up in the world have very advanced capabilities. And when I say about when I talk about advanced capabilities, what does that mean? At the end of the day, they're getting really good at hiding their tracks. And what does that mean? They're turning off logging on the devices that they're on. They're deleting the logs that are being sent or that should have been sent to your security tools, to your SIM tool. They're evading EDR tooling, by either disabling it or hiding behind it one way, shape, or another. And the fact you got all that compiled together and they're able to hide their lateral movement within your
Mm,
organization. That's when it really gets scary. The attackers are getting very good about moving low and slow. That at the end of the day, they're not
mm,
setting off alerts and until they're really prepared in order to perform the big boom. And at that point,
mm,
it's too late because they do have keys to your kingdom. They have been in your environment. They understand where they're at in your environment and can they take a foothold, before they make a lot of noise. And at that
mhm.
point, like I said, they've hidden themselves from most of the tooling. So those are the things I think that are most scary to us. How do we continue to properly uh, produce tools and solutions that attackers can't um, perform these types of events in your environment?
Thank you, Chris. Um, Another question from the audience here. What do you think are the best strategies for beginners to combat attackers?
Um, I always tell, no matter what the size of the organization, a thing that we preach and we preach a lot of is the fact that you have to have a sound foundation. It's just like building a house. If you don't have, your foundation, everything that you build upon top of it is going to eventually crumble. So understanding, and in my mind, where we really focus on is three areas of your environment: understanding your vulnerabilities, understanding your edge, your perimeter security, and those things are always changing. As we mentioned, we got cloud, and we got the remote workforce and those things. But having proper perimeter tooling, proper monitoring of your environment, of your assets, be it, employees and or their devices that they're using, and then identity and access management is key to understanding. You don't want to provide administrative credentials to somebody that really doesn't need it within your organization. And also putting, password rotations and password complexities and multi-factor authentication. Those are things that you can all do to prepare yourself. And it really doesn't cost that much money in order to make all those things sound within your environment. So,
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to showcase two more questions here from the audience. Do you think the amount of cyber attack will decrease or increase within the next 5 or so years?
I mean, if you had asked me that question 5 years ago, I think we're getting better at offsetting these attacks and such. But 5 years looking forward, um, I don't know. It's are they going to continue to grow? Are they going to continue to be there? That's the trajectory that we've been on for the past 10 years. And I hope and pray that someday that we as cybersecurity professionals that help organizations and organizations that have their own cybersecurity professionals, I hope that
Mhm.
someday that we start to win some of these battles. We have to get it right every single time, and they only have to get it right
Mhm.
once, and that once is easier for them than it is for us to get it right every time. So.
Thank you. Last question from the audience, Chris, that I'm going to showcase for today's discussion. Could new computing technologies like the one Microsoft has developed impose a very big threat to our cybersecurity, or is it in too much of an early stage to be used against us?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny. I had some notes I had earlier about quantum
Mhm.
computing and those things.
Mhm.
And you're right, quantum computing, the things that can happen within quantum computing is terrifying from our aspect. Is the technology there in the hands of those attacker or the criminal organizations that are running? Not yet. Will it be? Probably, but the fact that quantum computing can break, our encryption that we have or crack passwords in a tenth of a second is a problem. But again, yeah, that technology is obviously not readily available. Will it be? Going back to your question a minute ago about, the 5 to 10 years, there's something that could really change the trajectory of where cybersecurity stands. If quantum computing and things in that space, along with AI, really becomes readily available, it's probably is
Mm.
a different game 5 years from now. So.
Thank you so much, Chris. I know I mentioned that would be the last question, but I noticed a very interesting question from the audience earlier. Like, what are the best practices for securing remote work environments, especially with the rise of hybrid work models?
Yeah, again, I think identity and access management, access controls,
Mm-hmm.
um, zero trust, all architectures
Mm.
that are out there. Those conversations that your security organization or the groups that you guys work with can most certainly have with you. Those are the things I would focus on. Remote workforce is not going away. No matter how much we'd like to go back to the moat and castle days, those are over, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we have to be diligent about what we're doing with our remote workforce. And there is really good solutions out there that a lot of companies, Zscaler, just throw out a few names that has tooling that can really help organizations get to that next generation of VPNs and Duo, Cisco's Duo, any multi-factor authentication solution that's out there. Yes, those can be tricked, or those users can give up their multi-factor authorization codes, but we got to continue to push and have those solutions out there in the remote workforce hands because it is another line of defense for us.